Welcome back, artistic family, to Shannon Gibson Art and Designs. And today, what I thought I would do in a little bit more detail than other paintings that I've done is give you guys 7 tips to improve your abstract art. One of the tips that I love to do is a warm-up. And a warm-up is different for everybody. Some people don't do them. Most artists do them because they are highly effective. And I usually like to start off, not in all my paintings, but I use 2 different ways to kind of start. So one, I apply paint to the canvas, usually really thin paint, which we'll be doing in a moment. And or I also like to go in and do some markings and get the flow going and get my brain kind of in that flow of movement. And using a charcoal pencil, or you can use a graphite pencil, or you can use paint to do this. But I just like to kind of go in and just kind of do some markings and let my hand kind of do what it's going to do, okay? And that usually starts to lead me into the flow and the movement of the paint. Now this is going to be different for everybody because everybody's different, and what I like you might not like, and what works for me may not work for you. So keep that in mind when you're new and you're starting, because what somebody else does for a warm-up might not work for you. But for a starting point, it's really useful to maybe take bits and pieces from other artists and how they get started, and then, you know, obviously make that your own. And then I just like to spray the canvas, which you should always do, because it just helps move the paint around and gets everything kind of moving. And with the warm-up, for some people it can be shapes, okay, which is good with markings as well. So if you're someone who loves circular shapes, use circular shapes and just play with those shapes. Subtract them, add them, you know, put them on, cover them up, and do that. And some people put a time limit, like 5 to 10, 15 minutes. I don't put a time limit on. My brain just tells me when I'm ready to start moving. And that means like actually getting into the painting. And this stage of the painting is completely warm up. And it's the exploration stage also is what I like to call it. Because even just moving the water and diluting the charcoal marks, that helps me kind of figure out where I want to go with shapes and placement, and then that kind of changes and adds as I'm creating. So for number 1 in the warm-up, my suggestion is start with things that you enjoy, and that is using the tools that you like to use that make you feel comfortable and help release your creativity. And part of the intuitive painting process is letting yourself get inspired by the movements that you're making or the shapes that you're making when you're putting your paint on there. Now again, they could be modified because everything is going to be different for you. So like I said, you can start off with some of the things that I've mentioned, and then you can tailor them to work and fit with you. You might want to start off with thick paint. You may want to play with texture for a second and play around with that to kind of get you, you know, everything flowing. And just moving paint around the canvas. And while I'm doing that with this tool that I love, I am spreading it out hard and light in some areas, and you can see that I'm getting different variations of patterns. And at this stage where you're playing, you can say, nope, don't like it, erase it, take it out, do whatever you want. Oftentimes we can get stuck with a design or something and not want to change it, or something that you like. But in all honesty, what abstract art is, it's all about the adding and subtracting, which is the term I use for applying paint or different structures or mediums into your artwork and then covering it. They're always there slightly for the most part, and each layer plays a huge key. If you guys have watched me for a while, that you know even when I was doing fluid art all of the time, I usually use maybe 3 to 5, but most often 3 colors. Because one, you can create many different variations out of those colors. And it also keeps your mind a little bit more focused when you're not thinking about a huge color palette and then overusing color, and then that throws off your balance. So today we just have 2 high contrasting colors, white and black, and then we have deep yellow, medium hue. With the layers, okay, what's really important with layers is it adds interest and depth. So if you just put a few colors on the canvas and you don't have anything that's adding interest or depth, you're going to have a very stale painting that technically wouldn't be really that great because it's not emoting any feeling or emotion. It's just kind of stale and stagnant. And so what layers does is it draws you in and you see the depth and you're looking at all the different bits and pieces of the forms that all come together to create abstract art. And so I always say layers are very important. And I have had some comments from some of you guys saying, you know, you're so patient and how long did that take you? Do not put a time limit on your art. If you're not happy during the process or after, put it away. You can come back to it a day later, a week later, a month later, a year later. But take that pressure off, because painting intuitively is all about feeling. And then obviously you do got to use some knowledge and skill as well. But it's more about a feeling, because that feeling that you get when you create, you want that to be felt by the viewer and hopefully the purchaser. So for this layer, I'm just adding some black on, taking the catalyst wedge, moving it around, and then just feeling where I want to lay some forms, some shapes, some lines. I'm also thinking about depth and contrast and variation always. And with this layer, I really want to make sure that I have some light and some dark variations there, shades of black as well. And anything that I'm not liking as I'm going over it and making it, I am subtracting and taking it out. Now, I'm really focused here on the shapes, and that's really the building block. And to know if I really enjoy it, step 4, very important, step away and review. It is, I can't express how important that is, to give yourself a moment during the process or when you get to a certain stage that you like, because you want to know, you know, do I need to add something? Do I need to take something out? Does it look better horizontal or vertical? Is there too much going on? Is there not enough going on? These are all the things that I think about when I'm doing my step away and reviewing what I've done so far. And you can do this several times throughout the process, or you can do it a couple times, but you definitely have to do it because before you know it, the painting's over and you don't know how you got there and what happened. Now it is paint, so you can always go back over it, but this is a good practice to keep in your arsenal to use when you're creating abstract art. And here I want to make it a little bit lighter. I felt that it was a little too dark, and so I have omitted some things, and now I'm adding some more white back in, which is also creating some nice light gray and some shadows. And I'm applying the yellow now for the contrast and to add the next element and phase to the painting. But I'm doing this in various ways. So I'm applying it light, I'm applying it dark. I want some brush strokes in others. I'm blending it in other areas. And again, that's creating variation. And here I'm just adding some more interest with some texture and some markings with the lines here. And I'm also going vertical with the brush lightly, and that is bringing down the tones of the white into that yellow, creating this nice faded look and adding an extra element of layers and interest to the painting. So again, you don't have to use a lot of color. Step 5, patience. It really is a virtue, isn't it? It's not always that easy to do all of the time, but for me, I find that it really helps and it carries over. And art is a therapy, at least for me, and it's a great way to practice patience for sure. And so, you know, here I'm just adding in my other colors in different areas and kind of repeating the process, which kind of you do throughout the whole creation process. And I'm, playing again with the interest. I don't want everything to be the same, so I don't want the same strokes in the same vertical or horizontal or circular movement. I want there to be interest, and that creates interest with variation. And so as you're watching me, I am just going over paint, taking off paint, playing with the thickness, the thinness, how I want it to blend, soft blending, hard blending, and all of that together is what gives you a finishly formed piece of abstract art. Now, you may or may not be happy with it, and you're not going to be happy with every piece. At least I'm not. But following the fundamentals and doing it on a regular basis will make you more confident, and you'll have the tools to work with when you get in those moments of creative block or frustration. But again, if you follow them and you step back when you're getting a little frustrated and you look at your painting and you start to review it and you think about it, then when you come back with fresh eyes, you're more comfortable, your creative flow is there more, and you'll start to feel how the process comes together. It is so important to know that everything you're doing has a purpose. And if you think about that and do things with intention on the canvas, you will see all of that come together at the end. So patience and trust the process kind of go hand in hand, but I wanted to separate them because they are very different. And then that takes us to number 7, which is the final tip. And that is experiment, experiment, experiment. I don't think there's an artist on the planet who does not experiment, and it is not a journey that stops. It's something that is continuous. Learning is continuous, growth is continuous, and the more you experiment, the more techniques you learn, the more ways that you learn to use them, how your tools work, how different tools work, how household items and different things that you don't purchase but you have readily available, how you can incorporate those into your artwork. And that's just all part of experimenting. So I experiment every time I paint, like I mentioned, mainly in my warm-up stage, whether you guys are aware of it or not, and it really does help. So all of that being said, I really hope that these 7 tips help you guys improve your artwork and that you found them useful. So here I'm just reviewing what I have so far, and this is part of the process. You're going to repeat this throughout. Add, remove, add more contrast, which is what I'm doing now, as I removed a lot of the black in certain areas because I didn't feel that it worked or that I liked it. And then of course, I wanted to put in some more light and some shading, and so that is what I'm doing, creating a lot of balance now by adding in contrast and changing the chroma, which is its saturation basically and intensity of the colors. And now I want to add in some more light, and I want it to be a little bit lighter, and I'm thinking about where I'm adding that. And I have a lot of the grays and the whites up top that kind of lightly blend into the center. And so I'm keeping that in mind as well. And then of course adding variation and adding in some more markings and some lines, which I feel is needed and kind of just adds a lot more interest to the painting, allowing your eye to focus in various areas. And then I've done a lot of markings and vertical lines, and blending. And so here I'm just adding in some horizontal scumming with the palette knife and increasing the intensity of the yellow. As you can see, it's faded in other areas, and I want it more vibrant and strong here, which again adds to the contrast and the visual interest of the piece. So thank you so much for being here, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, and I would love to know if any of this is helping you guys and you found these tips useful. Feel free to leave a comment or send me an email at any time. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you all in the next painting.